Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat. Spirited conversations with interesting people. I'm your host, Kristopher Hart. I almost forgot that right now. And I'll tell you why I almost forgot it. Today I did 2 episodes back to back. And even though we do very little drinking on the show, very little sips, 2 shows back to back is rough to get the diction and the language clear. This is fantastic, by the way. And I know you're looking at what's in front of you and you're like, okay, this is an episode with Glenfiddich, Barrell, and Madeira. It's not. Essentially, today we did 1 episode earlier with Fire and Cane, Glenfiddich, which I am such a phenomenal fan of, especially at the price point. And then we had my good friend, good friend, honestly probably one of my best friends in the industry. I don't know that he would agree with me, but I like him more than... By the way, just in general in life, it's always better to love people more than they love you. Because if you don't love people more than they love you, then there's like this obligation or this guilt that comes with it. It's always better to be the one disappointed than to be the one that's disappointing people. I love Will Schragis. I definitely love him more than he loves me. But that being said, I'm a huge fan of the products. And today we got to talk about their 2 brand new luxury items in the lineup of Barrell Craft Spirits. A 15-year-old bourbon, which is really a blend of 15, 16, and 17-year-old whiskey. You don't see that very often anymore, at least without tying it to some absurd price tag. But 15, 16, 17-year-old bourbon, as well as a 25-year-old whiskey. Now, hear me out. I tried both today. They're not sponsors of the show. They don't pay me any money. I just got to enjoy 2 very limited, hard-to-find whiskeys that smelled incredible, that tasted great. Today was definitely me feeling privileged. I felt very blessed to have Will on today. But on top of that, Will's a good friend of mine, and we talk about everything. Including Madeira, which I forgot how great Madeira was. But their 25-year-old whiskey has a portion of which is finished in Madeira, and so he thought it'd be fun if we tried some Madeira with it. Today's episode, and I say this a lot, and I acknowledge that, was very fun for me. It was incredible. I couldn't be more excited, which I say that a lot too, I realize. But today was fun. Will's a good guy. With that being said, the Houston Whiskey Social, the state's largest, most diverse as far as 400 whiskeys, a couple of wines, a couple of tequilas, a couple of this, the most diverse and options of spirits in Texas. Those tickets are on sale now. You can get those at eventbrite.com. Search for Houston Whiskey Social, as well as houstonwhiskeysocial.com. Visit our Facebook page at The Houston Whiskey Social. The event is March 30th. I know it seems far away, but I will tell you that we, very surprisingly, are already more than half sold for the event. So the tickets went on sale a few weeks ago, and I don't think we were expecting that sort of early grab at tickets, but we saw an absurd amount of tickets sold in the last 3 weeks. So definitely get your tickets while you can. We have a few interesting things coming up in regards to the event that I'm pretty excited about. What else? What am I missing?
iTunes.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Leave this part in. Don't cut it. Definitely check the podcast out on iTunes. Please rate and review. I would love to see some more rates and some reviews of the show. Follow us on every platform. YouTube, we've got YouTube, Google Play, iTunes, Facebook. We got it all. Facebook's where we see all of our traction. I'm a big fan of Facebook. So anyways, without further ado, my good friend, genuinely good friend, love him to death, Will Schragis of Barrell Craft Spirits, the national sales director. I never remember his title, so I'm just gonna make it up. Will Schragis, Royal Sales National Ambassador Director of Operations and Sales at Barrell Craft Spirits, and my good friend. Cheers. Do I want to taste all 6? Yes, I do. Should I? Probably not. But I'm utterly fascinated. I see a lot of nuanced difference between the new packaging on the.
Yeah,
Is there a
very different?
A name for the line? Is it the luxury line?
It's called the Barrell Craft Spirits line.
Barrell Craft Spirits line.
It's the namesake of our company, if you will.
Sure, of course. Well, it's the name of the company, right? So,
it's more that we're going to keep releasing them. It won't always be available. It'll be every time we have something that is really special in one way or another, it'll come in under this label.
Sure.
And so actually, even though it's not branded that way, there is a little number 1 Easter egged into these bottles so that you know you got the first release of it.
Easter egged.
Yeah.
And then
that's the term that we use. What?
And then stated blatantly on Whiskey Neat.
Yeah. Well, it's that it's not the name of the item anywhere.
Sure.
The UPC won't change. It's that we know for a lot of people being able to distinguish between things that might not be important to most people. We wanted to give that to a consumer that follows us really carefully.
Sure. And you guys have plenty of them. I mean, Barrell's got quite the following, quite the craft following.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start. What's on the end here? What do we do?
So we've got the
Infinite Barrel.
The Infinite Barrel project.
Okay, and that's the most recent release with the Halloween Easter egg on it.
I don't think it's in Texas yet, but
okay. All right, so let's start there.
Cool.
And by the way, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And last time you were on, we had Wade on.
Wade, and we have some stuff that I'm sure Wade would love to talk about.
So Wade's been on a couple times. I thought I'd give him a break this round. We explored getting Pasha on and a couple other guys that I thought would be fantastic to talk to, but no, I got it. But everybody seemed to be busy. It is Wednesday, right? So typically we record on Fridays, but we lined up 2 today.
Yeah, I know. I'm happy to get you after a bunch of other whiskeys.
Oh, I know. I hope that's not sarcasm.
Are you kidding? Everyone loves talking to everyone else after they've had a couple whiskeys.
After they've had a few. That and Zero Sleep. Cask strength, October 31st with a skull on it. American whiskey.
Yep. So this is interesting. It's an American whiskey legally because it's bottled in America. But as you know, there are 4, at this point, I believe 5 countries of distillate in there.
Well, not countries, but locations. So Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Scotland, Ireland, and Poland. 4?
And then also, I guess, so it wasn't this release. It's the one that'll be bottled in December has 14-year-old Canadian rye in it as well.
Interesting. Really old Canadian rye is, like, I don't mean to blanket statement rye whiskey from Canada in any general way, but Canadian whiskey typically doesn't have a massive following, although old Canadian whiskey does.
Yeah.
And with No Simple Task from Beam, I believe they've got some 40-year-old Canadian whiskey in there. It tends to be a lot. There's nothing wrong with the spirit. It just tends to be a really mild spirit. And when you get into the older ages on Canadian whiskey is where you get real bold flavor out of it. You don't usually get bold flavor out of young Canadian whiskey. So I get excited when I see 14-year-old Canadian whiskey added to a blend.
Well, as I told you many months ago, though we haven't done it yet, we do have some 13 and 14-year-old Canadian rye barrels that we're releasing soon. So we'll make sure to get a set for you.
Oh, like single barrel release. Okay. Your last one sold pretty well.
We've got plenty more. I wouldn't say plenty more. We've got about 50 that are coming out next year for tasting.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and I know that speed's not everything, but I believe the fastest barrel of barrel bourbon sold in Texas was ours.
Huh.
Same day.
Good to know. Congratulations. We're just happy to get things to people that they're excited about.
Now, we did have a situation in which, lots of chocolate notes on there. That reminds me of like a bolder spicier Balcones rye. They use chocolate malt, so a little bit more toasted malt. A lot of chocolate notes there. But they, going back to the Bourbon Barrel, we had a couple stores that had a couple that somehow got set aside and forgotten about, and then so technically the last bottle sold not that long ago, but only because it got forgotten about and unnoticed.
So we have so much to try. I want to move on, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about this project because we talked about it last time I was here. I don't want to.
We got all the time in the world. I mean, it shows an hour, but we're flexible.
Just because we've been doing it for more than a year now, I've gotten better at articulating the way that I want to talk about it, and also I think that we've executed it in a way that we're really proud of.
Okay.
Essentially, we have this 2,000-gallon stainless steel tank that.
Ooh. You just reminded me of something I want to talk to you about.
Started as a blend of 9 whiskeys from 4 different countries. We spent, 6 months or so arguing about the blend. But we only bottle 10% of it at a time.
Okay. So it's an ever-evolving, ever-marrying.
Yeah. What it is
vat.
In that 10% space that we have almost all of the original ingredients and then other things that we're excited about.
Like a Tootsie Roll.
Aging around it, basically.
I think the original batch of Tootsie Rolls was rolled into every subsequent batch. So when you taste a Tootsie Roll now...
It's like a sour mash of Tootsie Roll?
It's a sour mash of the original batch Tootsie Rolls.
That's exciting to me, but also terrifying on how shelf-stable Tootsie Rolls are.
Well, I guess if you're... I would imagine there's a heating process with each batch. So
I recook it?
Yeah, it gets recooked and re-rolled in the next batch. And anyways, it's also similar to the Solero system for Glenfiddich 15, which they were on last week or 20 minutes ago, depending on your reference of time. But they do that Solero vatting of 15-year-old just constantly, and then once it reaches a certain level, they roll into the next batch.
What's different about what we do here, the reason we don't call it a Solera, is the products that are going into it are still aging. So they're actually older than the original ones were at this point. And a lot of them are being finished separately. So, for instance, there's Western Highland single malt in here. Originally, it was just ex-bourbon, but then we finished it in rum casks. And so I believe this is the first bottling that has the rum finished. So we consider it a different ingredient, but it is still the same Scotch, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Because it's finished separately in our facility. And so that only went into, only 10% of it had a small amount of rum finish in it. So it's a new ingredient, but it's such a small accent. And it's only because as it was finishing, we felt like it would be an interesting flavor to weave into it. And so the new ingredients in their first bottling have a little bit of an influence on the flavor. And then that influence stays there, but it sort of blends into everything else as it gets diluted. But the average age of the cask is getting older and older as the project goes on.
Now, is it kept in the steel vat the entire time?
In between bottlings?
Sure.
Yeah. We decided to use a steel vat partially because we didn't know if the product would be received well, and we didn't want to invest in a gigantic marrying tun. But also, once you put it in wood, you have loss to angel share, and you also have influence of the wood as it's getting older. You lose control of it a lot. And as a company that cares a lot about blending, we don't know what's going to happen to it in a barrel. So we prefer blending aging the ingredients before blending them, if that makes sense.
Sure. Okay, I think I've grasped it. I mean, to me it tastes. I don't know all the pieces. I know the last time we kind of went over with you and Wade, we went over every little kind of like what went into the mix. But to me, it's very reminiscent of almost like the little book. The kind of like it kind of reminds you of bourbon, but not really. Mostly not bourbon. More of the rye spice, the chocolate notes, the everything else that goes into the mix besides. And I don't pick up on any peated whiskey at all.
Right. There's the scotches that are in there. I think the highest peat content is about 10 parts per million. And so
and once you cut it down with everything else, it's insignificant.
Yeah. So if you think about it, you can notice it, but it's not a major part of the flavor profile.
Sure. What's going on with the Madeira bottle here?
So I brought the Madeira bottle partially because one of the whiskeys we're going to try has a little bit of a Madeira finish on it.
Okay, so do we want to wait till we get to that one?
I guess so. I also just increasingly, as a company that deals with only very high proof things, I like talking about low proof and non-alcoholic options because
I'm with you until you said non-alcoholic, but go ahead.
And I love Madeira, and this time of year when people want sort of darker, heartier things, Madeira is by no means low proof, but this one's 19%. Some of my favorite finished whiskeys are Madeira finished, but also that I really like when I worked on premise, really liked using Madeira as a not knocking someone else out before they get into a car or in a place where people can smoke cigars at a lower...
A very hearty... I always forget the term, but there's a term in the wine industry for those wines that you basically can't ruin, and Madeira's in that category.
Yeah, it was actually Madeirized is the word. And Madeira's, to my knowledge, really the only...
Super hearty, you can't ruin it, it doesn't expire.
There's bottles that were opened 100 years ago that they still consider good. That
palatable, drinkable.
If it's sealed... it won't oxidize, and so it sort of stays good, which makes it a really nice thing to have at home too, because like a liquor, you can open it and then put it on the shelf.
Sure. And come back to it later.
All sorts of fascinating vintage Madeiras available and reasonably priced sometimes too.
Have you been down to Rosewater yet? I know you met Pasha the first time we met, but have you been down there since?
I have been to Rosewater, but I have not been there since they have all the crazy Madeiras.
So they've got a couple. We did one a few months ago that was like from 1931.
Nice. Yeah, there's a American Revolution.
There might have been
that are,
but there might have been one that he had, and he did it at cost. Once you get to that price point, it's better just for the story. Mm-hmm. But he, I think he might have done one that was like 1911 or 1914, and it was just crazy rich, man. Mm-hmm. It's just like an experience. That's what's so fun about this hobby is. I feel like I'm spitting all over myself, but there's a good portion of this is about experience. Mm-hmm. It's not about being an expert. It's not about imagery of look what bottle I have. It's about tasting basically time capsules of human history. I mean, 25-year-old whiskey we're getting to. Mm-hmm. 25 years ago, I was very, very young. Yeah. I was 5. I'm 31. So it's a nice little port back into time, so no pun intended. But there was something I was going to ask you in regards to. Okay, so we'll come back to the Madeira specifically for the Madeira finish. Mm-hmm. You said something earlier. Is the facility up and running in Kentucky yet?
We're in the same facility where we were last time that I was here.
I'm sorry. What I mean to say is the facility open to the public?
No.
Okay.
We have,
because I want to be there next week, and I would love to come by and meet Joe.
First of all,
put you on the spot.
Yeah, I know you have.
Does Joe listen?
Joe listens to this.
Yeah. Hey, Joe.
We've loosened
a
little bit in that if there's time, we're set up. We have the insurance to have a visitor now.
Sure.
There's still all sorts of things that we need to be careful about, who to show and whatnot in the distillery, but it doesn't look nice. It's very much a work facility.
Well, and we talked about this in the episode with Glenfiddich, that with Bardstown in Kentucky, listen, 1792 makes good whiskey. There's no complaints. I'm not bashing the brand, but the facilities could not be more, I'll use the term industrialized.
Yeah, but basically all the major producers are like that.
Some of them are less... I'm trying to be careful with my words here. Mm-hmm. 1792 is the lead. It looks like an old textile factory, mm-hmm. and it's probably in the worst. I say the worst shape, but not that there's anything wrong with whatever shape it's in. It's producing incredible bourbon out of Bardstown, and they're doing the process right. In fact, I've openly talked about how their white dog is some of the best white dog I've ever tasted. I think it's incredible on its own before it even hits a barrel. I think it's fantastic. But that being said, you go to Peerless, mm-hmm. or Old Forester's new distillery, and it's this completely, what's the word? Redone, remodeled. Like, it's really kind of touristy, clean, and lots of clean, sharp edges. And the point is that most distilleries in Kentucky are kind of industrialized. It's not really.
I think also for us, the biggest hurdle now, besides the like general messiness this time of year because there's so much going on, is we're still a 7-person company. And so
I always forget that.
When someone comes for 3 hours to taste through barrels, because it takes a couple hours to, even if we're just tasting our products, there's so many there.
Cripple the business for those few hours.
Yeah, we still have a backlog of basically every single barrel we've released in the past couple years. Just a bottle that we kept. And so if Joe's doing that, he's not doing something else. If I'm hosting someone at the distillery, I'm not working with a distributor.
Don't judge me for the energy drink.
No, go for it. And so the thinking as a company about the like process of do you hire a strictly hospitality person, and then does it make the experience less sincere because that person's whole job is hosting and they're not involved in other stuff? Or do you do you make sure there's always someone available to host? We've talked about it a lot. In fact, I was in Kentucky before. I flew here from Kentucky. And we were talking about next year how to handle that because there's so many people we'd love to host. And the idea right now, though I make no promises, is we're going to pick probably 2 weeks next year that everyone or most of the people from the company come to Kentucky and we rent out a big house or we rent a block in a hotel near there and we just host everyone at the same time from around the country that we want to deal with. And so it's a hosting and part of conference.
That sounds exhausting. Those 2 weeks are going to be exhausting.
And I have a feeling a lot of it is going to fall on me to plan, which is exhausting but also exciting because I'd love to spend time with you in Kentucky. I'd also love to spend time with you and Peter from Flask in LA and Kentucky at the same time. There's people that I would like to be involved in collaborating with on projects that either don't know each other well or have never met each other, even though they see each other on Instagram and they.
Sure. And there's plenty of those. There's lots of people I consider friends and I've never met them. Their Instagram personalities would be the way to say that.
As you know, I am regrettably not on Instagram. And so,
oh, really?
Yeah. Our company is very much on Instagram.
Who handles your social media?
Joe's wife.
Interesting.
Yeah. We're a family operation.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I sympathize with that. I idolize the when a family does it all together. Whitmire's locally, him and his brother do it. I mean, it's fantastic. But anyways, I would love a reason to bring these. I hate this term because it seems pompous, but influencers. It's a common term in the industry, but these people who have these pretty decent followings. I mean, I've got an okay following on Instagram, but around 5,400 people, and then she has 18,000. But she's out of $7,000 in California. Is that what it's called? $7,000? Or there's a couple of famous whiskey bars in California, and I think she bartends there, but she travels around. And she makes a lot of like whiskey dresses where she like sews her own clothes and they're themed after distilleries. Anyways, she's fantastic. But all that being said, I'm going to throw in my completely ignorant suggestion. And what I would do is I would find someone, oftentimes in businesses, you need when you're strapped for staffing, but you don't need a full-time person. What you really need is a part-time person, and have that person part-time do other stuff, and then maybe 2 days a week designated for hospitality.
We've talked about that. I think the difficult thing is in being a company that produces such complicated whiskeys, the level of expertise of our own products, but also just the spirits drinking and bar and retail world that we would want the person who's the face of hosting to have is a difficult find as an employee. It's someone that we'd want to be involved in all parts of the business because those are the questions that we get. And so it really has to be Joe to some extent.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting is someone who does more than just host, that is involved in other processes.
Yeah, we're talking about it a lot. And what's exciting about next year is even since I was here 6 months ago, we've launched a couple states. We're solidly in 44 states at this point. we will probably be in all 50 and a couple territories by the end of next year. We're aggressively interviewing to hire some more regional sales help because I'm still covering basically all of it except for the tri-state area. We just hired a woman named Eva who's doing it. Fantastic job.
So, you know that thing in movies where it's kind of a classic shtick where they cut to a cut screen that says technical difficulties and it's like broken wires, like where they're basically cutting out a section, like before the jack swipe, you know, with your thing. Okay, for the next 10 seconds, I want you to find that image online of technical difficulties and just bleep out everything we're saying, okay? Okay, ready?
So anyway, what we're drinking now, this batch 17, it's getting released right around now. I think actually...
That's an oak bomb.
I think the first oak and spice.
Let me see the bottle.
So this
That's Kentucky. That doesn't taste like Tennessee.
I'm so glad you said it before I said it. There's Tennessee, Kentucky, and Indiana in here.
Oh, really? I didn't really taste Tennessee. I got some very familiar oak
into my description of the product right now.
Sorry.
No, I'm so happy about it. I'm happy that you feel that way because I have a little bit of drinking my own Kool-Aid when I talk about things.
Sure. It's a natural bias that you can't really help.
We have a joke that Joe does his best work when he's angry. Batch 8, for instance, was a blend that he made because people were claiming he didn't have stocks of old bourbon anymore. So he was like, I'm going to put a 132 proof oak bomb together.
Sure. Ooh, okay. A little Tennessee on that last one.
Inspiration behind this was a lot of Joe's favorite bourbons were 10-year-olds in the market, just different releases.
It's a nice sweet spot for a lot of bourbon.
More and more of them are either moving the age statement to the back label or taking it away altogether, and he was annoyed about it.
It's funny that you mentioned removing the age statement because this actually reminds me of a Kentucky, and I know you can't tell me because of non-disclosures, but...
well, there's a lot of different stuff in here. And
sure,
so
but the Kentucky distillery I'm specifically thinking of is...
there's also, to my knowledge, there's 2 different distilleries in here.
Okay.
But Joe basically wanted to make a spicy Kentucky-style 10-year-old bourbon. And he still blended MGP into it. He still blended some Tennessee into it. But it's an homage to the bourbons that he really loved that were 10-year-old age dated. And we really liked the idea of being the one company that's sort of creating a 10-year-old age statement product instead of...
So how does it work? If you're doing a blend of, let's say, Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee, but the age statement on here is 10 years... Oh, it's the youngest age in the bottle. Okay, disregard. I'm stupid. It's a rookie trivia question.
You gonna leave that one in?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm over here. I'm like, why does it say 10 years, 4 months if it's... So anyways, no, I know better. I think it's... I often have an aversion to Tennessee whiskey, specifically that we talk about Dickel a lot on the show, except for the older Dickel that has a lot more oak influence, almost over oaked. Like if it was a Kentucky whiskey at the same age as a Tennessee whiskey, it wouldn't be as good. There's something about that mineral Tennessee note that's older that somehow tastes more appropriate than if it was just Kentucky whiskey at that age. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what's important to think about when you're tasting old products, any product, but old products especially, is that maturation, oxidation, extraction, all of those things are not linear processes. Just as one set of molecules is somehow being converted or extracting into another set of molecules,
sure.
It doesn't stop doing that, and then the set of flavors that was created is then changing, and it's more like a waterfall than it is a rocket, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
And the proof that you put something into the barrel sets the stage for all sorts of different types of extractions because there's certain things that are water soluble and certain things that are alcohol soluble. And so if you take a barrel that was entered at a lower proof and then the proof goes up, it's not going to be the same as something that went in at a higher proof and went down after a year.
Sure.
Because different things will have been soluble in the water, but then it evaporated and so it's left in there. I don't want to get too sciencey on this.
No. Like this is what it's about. I mean, we've got a listenership that is thirsty for knowledge, and nobody wants a typical conversation where you're just kind of sales pitching, what Barrell Craft Spirits has been doing for the past few years has been very apparent that there is a passion that Joe has and that the company has of blending, experimenting, trying something new, trying something thinking outside the box is an understatement. Some of the stuff you guys have done, I mean, the Infinite Barrel project alone is I say abnormal in the sense that it's just not your typical average, but it's very welcomed abnormality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you want to borrow that for the name of your next release, I'm open for it.
It's funny, we have just started talking about that sort of thing. And as we get to the dovetail at the end, there's definitely a naming conversation that I'm excited to have with you.
I am too, because the dovetail thing alone, one, I try to keep up with your label approvals. There's a few brands that I constantly check, and Campari, Wild Turkey is one of them. But Barrell, I always try to peek and see what's behind the curtain.
We talked last year.
I missed dovetail.
We talked last year about doing some fake ones around April 1st, just to throw people off.
That would be awesome.
The problem is, first of all, you have no idea when it's going to get approved, even if you submit it. So we couldn't make sure it got approved on April 1st. Secondly, the last thing we wanted is to get red flagged in a problematic way because we were playing a joke on people that follow the TTB website.
Well, here's the thing. You can still come up with a funny
but it's
label that was still technically an approved label. I mean, that's what Westland does.
Right, but
Westland does it every year. They do an April Fool's release.
No, but they're actually making a product about it. Westland doesn't release 2 products a month the way that we do.
Sure.
So putting together a thing just to have a joke
be a lot of work. Yeah.
You know that's my humor. I would gladly spend the time to do that, but it would muck up our distribution network in a way that we have enough trouble getting them to learn about all of the products we release anyway.
Sure.
Which, by the way, I'm really excited to pour this next. So this is our newest, for lack of a better term, line of products. As you know, and a lot of people who follow us know, we have the Infinite Barrel project, and we have the batches of whiskey and the batches of bourbon and the batches of rye. We had a batch of rum, and then we had the Tale of Two Islands rum.
Oh, the rum. Let's bring that back. Speaking of which, let me just throw a quick interjection. Your rum introduced me to Hampton Estate. And there's a company that I recently posted about called Stolen. And they do
the overproof.
The 6-year overproof
375, yeah.
Yep. It's a half bottle, $375. Guess how much it is?
I've seen it pretty cheap, and so I use that product in drinks in my house all the time.
It's incredible. It's $14 and change. So I bought, and it all depends on the store and how much they pick up, but typically a $15 6-year-old Hampton Estate rum in a half bottle, so $30 for a full, which they don't sell a full, so you have to buy 2. Stunning, but that Jamaican funk that we got off your bottle is what I immediately recognized in this bottle and was like, oh, okay. So my local store, there's currently 9 cases in Houston. My local store just brought in 2 today. As soon as this interview's over with, I'm going to buy the 2. I'm trying to get a few other stores in Houston to bring it in because I haven't had all of Stolen's product. I'm a little hesitant with the smoked rum, but the overproof is a gold medal.
If you like Hamden, there's a rum distillery, Long Pond, which is a neighbor
Long
of
Pond's
Hamden.
great, yeah.
That,
owned by Pierre Ferrand, Maison Ferrand.
It is now, but a lot of the independent bottled Long Ponds are from way before then.
Correct, yeah.
And there's really beautiful stuff
Good
coming
stuff,
out there.
yeah.
So anyway, this is the first time we've sort of extended upwards in terms of price point and packaging. We had the line of single barrels, but we had never done something that was so limited and also premium.
How did you do that?
Through the...
Yeah.
So everything about this is we didn't worry about the cost of doing it. We just wanted to make it as good as we could.
Sure.
Which is the way that Joe started the company 5 years ago. But since then, the cost of... There's 16-year-old MGP in here. There's no way to do a 16-year-old MGP at our normal price point.
Sure.
It's a blend of, 4 different lots, 15 to 17-year-old bourbons, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana. The oldest is a 17-year-old Kentucky. There's about 3,000 bottles or so.
2,600?
That's not the last bottle, but it's roughly 3,000 bottles. It ships in 3 packs, and so it's 1,000 3-packs, if you will. And this line has 3 different products in it. It has this. It has a 25-year-old American whiskey that we're about to try. It also has a rum blend that I don't have a sample of right now, but I can try to get you one.
Are the samples this big?
We'll see. It's funny, the whiskey, there were only 600 bottles of, and so that's my personal bottle that I brought because it all sold out immediately. I didn't have samples pulled.
Speaking of selling out, so for those who live in Texas, how many is Texas seeing of? Let's just start with this one.
The whiskey or the bourbon, I'd have to look at the list off the top of my head. Texas.
Do you know of any stores getting it specifically in Houston?
I do, but out of respect for our distributor, because this is being released this week, basically.
Sure.
I don't know where, I don't know how much, and I don't know if they're spoken for by customers of those stores or not yet. What I do know with the bourbon, not the whiskey or the rum, but with the bourbon, we are doing it in 2 releases. There's the initial release, and then there's what we're sort of calling a backfill release. It's exactly the same juice. It had to do with Joe rejected about half of the boxes from the box manufacturer because we wanted everything to be perfect with the boxes.
Sure.
And so we had to wait for the second set of boxes, which meant we had to wait for a second truck, which meant we had to get a second purchase order from all of our distributors, so on and so forth. And so it's not that there's going to be all that much more, but there will be this sort of second hit of it that comes. It has created a lot of headaches for me because I don't know if that's going to be before or after Christmas. But,
right.
We are hoping that if there's some stores that sell it so quickly and they upset people, we may be able to get some more to them. But
the nose on this is just phenomenal. And I'll be honest with you, I think specifically some older bourbons, I think they shine in that 50 to 55% range. Mm-hmm. So 52 and change, I think is a nice sweet spot.
We're so proud of this, and I'm so excited to have an established product line that has a distribution and a shelf price of this, because it means that when we're sourcing, we don't have to worry about the cost in the same way that we used to in terms of not losing
Slim
money.
Margins, yeah.
That the margin on this are lower than they are on other things that we do, but we can start playing in the Scotch independent bottler market of if there's 16-year-old Linkwood on the market that we never would be able to get to the States to use to blend. We could now because we could release something in this line that has Scotch in it.
Sure.
It changes the way that we talk to brokers because we have an ability to – we have an established product with a shelf price that's higher that we can back into.
You're not trying to resell anything. You're already established.
The opposite or like flip side of that is it allows us to include a lot of micro distilleries that they weren't able to work with us because their margins were so slim to begin with that they couldn't discount on a wholesale level. And so it's allowed us to reach out to a lot of the distilleries around the country that we like to source distillate from them, knowing that it's going to be more expensive. So we don't have anything else coming on this line anytime soon, but it's nice to know that we have it in our back pocket as we create projects.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just really excited about it.
So you said a blend of 15 to 17-year-old?
Yeah, so it's 15-year-old Tennessee, 15 and 17-year-old Kentucky, and 15 and 16-year-old Indiana, or MGP.
Interesting.
And it's interesting, when we were putting them together, I was most excited about the whiskey. It's a little weirder, and you know that I like complicated blends. It's a 25-year-old. And after it was all done, I love all 3, but I was really taken by the bourbon when Joe sent me the final. Yeah. I was in New York when he finished it, and he sent me like a flask of the final bit. And then it was written about really recently in Forbes.
I hate to do this, but I have to control consumption. Oh, there's a chance I won't even see the bottle moving forward. That is a oak bomb. But the heat, that little bump to 52, is it 52.55? 52.55%. Yeah. That's got a really great, for 15 years old, you typically get a lot of older oak notes. I like to say the word oak tea like you've had some chips sitting in water for far too long. It doesn't taste 15 years. To me, it's got more of a younger note in a more positive way than typically 15-year-old whiskey is received. Bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
That is good. I like it.
Well, thank you. We're really proud of it, and it unfortunately has created some complicated situations for us because we want to keep everyone happy, and the demand for it has exceeded what we have so much.
We've talked on this show about the egos in the spirits world of retailers really trying to twist arms. Don't drop it.
Twist arms, and then also
get their feelings hurt.
And it's really not a good look for our company for the only product on the shelf to be $250.
Sure.
And so,
what's the price on this one?
They'll be about $250.
And what about the 25-year?
The same price.
Okay.
We have a policy that if it's the same label design, it's the same price from us.
I see.
Our products are so complicated that the last thing we need is 100 different price points. This is only the 4th price point we've ever released, despite including single barrels releasing 120-something products in the past couple years.
Does Joe ever travel? I'd love to have him on the show.
Yeah, and he will a little bit more next year. I think we, though we're still being very careful about the way that we're expanding, we're hiring people in different places in the company next year, and the hope is to not pull Joe out of production because he does all the blending, but to have him a little bit more available for important things.
I didn't know, and correct me if I'm wrong here if you can't talk on it, but I didn't know that MGP still had 25-year-old whiskey stocks.
So, and to be totally honest, I don't know the whole story of this, but this was light whiskey that was purchased from a broker.
Okay.
And I have my theories about why it became available that I can talk to you off the air about.
Sure.
But it did. And I also know that we're not the only people that got it. I think there's going to be a couple other 25-year-old American whiskeys coming out. But when we got our sample of it, it was 24. It was still in barrel.
Sure.
And there's really very little of it. At first, we just wanted to release it because it was so special, and we had never seen something like that. But it was also a little dead because it was a light whiskey, and it was in used barrels. It was all used barrel taste.
Sure.
And there were these hints of really beautiful, like tertiary oxidative qualities to it. But it was high proof, and it was... It wasn't a product that if you didn't want it for the excitement, we thought people would taste and say that's delicious. And so
it's absolutely delicious, being light whiskey.
What we decided to do was finish it. We split it into first 2 parts, and then it became 3 parts, and then it kind of became 4 parts. Originally, we were going to do it half leaving it the way it was, and half in Cercial Madeira. Cercial is the second driest style of Madeira. It's a very oxidative, gentle finish, but it still has this like grapey, nutty quality to it. We wound up taking the part that we weren't going to finish and rebarreling it briefly into virgin oak and then also our bourbon barrels. So it was a virgin oak finish, an ex-bourbon finish, or a double barrel finish, and the Madeira finish. We also had 1 Dom Fronte Calvados cask that we didn't know what to do with, and it was only 1. So the idea was, okay, let's just put the really old whiskey in there because it's either going to be work in the blend or it's going to be the coolest single barrel thing ever.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You guys picked up. There's a lot of. So I'm not bashing this other brand, but I'm going to bring it up because for 2 reasons. One, Bourbon 30. You familiar?
I'm familiar with the brand.
Are you familiar with the recent controversy?
To some extent, although I say this totally honestly, I haven't had time to really read about what's going on, except for you're like the 4th person to mention it to me.
It's mostly nonsense. So the issue, let me back up. So they did a release called Bald Monk, and it was basically a private boutique blend they did with a group, and it's largely 13-year-old light whiskey. And it's okay. I'm not a fan.
I'm just going to cut you off. That's okay. You know that I'm fascinated about all the different business things that happen and all the different markets that happen. I don't want to speak ill of other companies, and I don't know anything about this.
I was actually going to defend them.
Okay, so, great.
Yeah. So I don't sling mud, and I know that you're not a fan of being a part of those conversations. So
I feel like my job is being really positive about.
Sure. No. I was just going to say that I've been very honest of them and defending of who they are. Jeff Mattingly, we're Facebook friends. I've talked to him. He seems like a good dude. the recent controversy around it. So let me back up. So all I was going to talk about is I'm not a fan of Bald Monk's light whiskey component. This, you guys put it in all these other barrels, and it really picks up. It's very apparent that it picked up everything it could from all these other used barrels. And the note, everything about this, there's no way with my experience with light whiskey that would have ever assumed it was light whiskey. Like it's genuinely a fantastic product.
Well,
25-year-old whiskey at $250 is not unreasonable at all.
What we really wanted to do, and cast strength also, this was 111 proof.
I wonder how this would do blind next to Boss Hog. You know what I mean? Fan of the brand too.
Yeah.
No mudslinging.
What we tried to do with this is we didn't want to put anything that would sweeten it in a way that would cover up how complex the old whiskey was. And so all of the finishes are either just charred oak or really dry oxidative things.
The nose on this is probably, I'm a big, I hate to use this term, I'm going to use it again, nose whore. The nose on whiskey is really kind of, can you not say that word?
I'm just making sure.
Okay.
Have I sworn yet?
No, I don't think so.
I'm good. It's because I just started drinking.
Yeah. No, I can't. If I knew there was another term for it, I have a huge nose bias, is what I'll say. So if something smells incredible, I'm a little forgiving on the finish and I'm a little forgiving on the palate because of the aromatic experience. Every part of this smells so awesome. Like I can't get enough of it. Both of them, the bourbon too. And it tastes just as good as it smells, so there's no forgiveness. We've got 15 minutes to fit a lot in.
Yeah.
It flies by.
I know.
And I knew you said, the first time you came on, you said you had all these notes. This time you had one note. And what was that note?
Happy Hanukkah, Karen Agalka.
You hear that, Karen? We'll send it to her.
Oh, also Josh Haddon, Happy Hanukkah.
I don't know that guy.
Josh Haddon is Single Cask Nation. He's the Impex guy in New York.
Oh, okay.
Also ran Whiskey Jubilee.
I'm a fan.
Two good friends of mine have been very helpful to me in my career, and it is Hanukkah right now, so happy Hanukkah to them.
Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Impex. Local guy is Gary Clark.
So this is a whiskey called Dovetail. I call it the Dovetail, but that's not the real name. That, first of all, even with the Barrell Craft Spirits line, this is my favorite thing we've produced all year. It's being released right about now also.
Indiana and Tennessee? Okay.
So this is a blend of 3 whiskeys. But the reason I wanted to have it on the show here is for labeling reasons, this is actually a distilled spirit specialty.
So this is not technically, according to the TTB, a whiskey, a bourbon. It's in that gray zone of nothingness.
So I'll tell the story briefly, and there's nuances that are even more interesting, but they take a long time to talk about. The 3 ingredients to this are 10-year-old MGP whiskey finished in 2013 Dunn Vineyards Cabernet barrels, 11-year-old Tennessee bourbon finished in late bottled vintage port pipes.
Yeah, there's a sweetness here that's really prevalent.
11-year-old Tennessee bourbon finished in blackstrap molasses rum casks. So there's only 3 ingredients, which is actually fewer ingredients than we usually use.
Say the last thing again, the third one?
11-year-old Tennessee bourbon finished in blackstrap molasses rum casks.
Interesting.
All 3 of those qualify as straight whiskey by themselves. When we first submitted the label for this, it was called Whiskey Number 6. And it was rejected by the TTB. And it's because in the little section where we talk about finishes, it said 10-year-old whiskey finished in, and it explained all of them. On the back, it explained what was bourbon and what was whiskey and what states it was from. And basically what we were told is that we had to use, at first, the moniker blend of straights because there's 3 different straight whiskeys.
Sure.
When we then submitted that label, it was sent back to us in that because the whiskeys were finished in separate things, it didn't fall into the blend of straights category because that's a new category that isn't written particularly well.
Fairly new, yeah.
And we went back and forth so many times that it got to the point where if we wanted to have on the front label
the word
the
straight
information, no, it's not straight. It's two different states. We never tried to have straight. It was a blend of straights. The word straight is so important for certain labels. It's not important for us because most of what we do blends things to the point where it's not straight whiskey anyway.
Sure.
We got to the point where if we wanted to say specifically Dun Vineyards and wanted to say specifically late bottle vintage port or LBV port, or even port pipes, and wanted to say specifically rum casks, we either could not say that it was from two different states, which it is, or we couldn't say the age, because if you're a distilled spirit specialty, you're not allowed to have an age statement. So we were essentially told, even though all three of these ingredients are straight whiskey, you have to pick one of the things to get rid of on the label because there's no category that includes all three.
Yeah, and see, that kind of harkens to the issue that the Scotch Whiskey Association had, in which Karen Kumbasbox was too transparent that it defeated their laws and regulations reach a point in which the whole point is to be transparent, but when you're too transparent, it doesn't line up with the regulations, and then they kind of end up forcing you to be more vague as opposed to be more transparent when people would prefer transparency.
We even had a label rejected that was the exact same label, and it just explained on the back that it was 10 and 11-year-old whiskey, and or 10-year-old whiskey and 11-year-old bourbon, and that was rejected as well. And so
where did the name Dovetail come from?
So the name Dovetail was after Whiskey 6 we weren't allowed to use the word whiskey in the name of the title. We can use it in the description, but not in the name. And so we just had this like brainstorming period, and finally Joe was in like a carpentry store, and someone was talking about why this one particular cabinet was more expensive because there was a dovetail joint in it. And he like had this epiphany. It's like, that's what this whiskey is. It's a dovetail.
That's hilarious.
And so it's a little later. It's supposed to be in September. But first of all, Dun Vineyards is my favorite domestic winery. And so
really?
To have that as part of it, to have that collaboration with Mike Dunn and Randy Dunn, but really we spoke with Mike, it feels so valuable to me.
So what's the price point that are we kind of reasonably expecting for the Dovetail?
It's the same as the bourbons. And so
okay, so $80, give or take.
Yeah. And there's about 800 six-packs of it.
And it should be here this month before Christmas.
Yeah, I think there might be some in our distributor's warehouse right now.
Good old favorite brands. I need to have John back on.
Yeah, I was talking to him yesterday.
He called me. His episode is still our number one episode.
Cool.
15,000 aggregate. Does aggregate mean all together? On all platforms, from the website to the Facebook video, whatever. But his episode on distribution, allocation, and inducements, forcing stores to buy stuff they don't want. It's a pretty good episode.
Yeah.
So I definitely encourage people to go back and check that out. All right, so we have two things left: a Madeira and a surprise. And I don't know what the surprise is.
We can do the Madeira first if you'd like, and then we can do the surprise. So the surprise is,
regardless of what I'd like, I don't know what the other thing is. So,
well, really, what it is that that like I try to try everything that comes out, and sometimes I'm really disappointed, and I won't talk about those. Sometimes there's items like Oban Little Bay, I was so skeptical of.
Oh, it's good though.
But I love it.
It's a solid.
I didn't like Talisker Storm. I didn't like a lot of the things in that category, and then I loved Oban Little Bay.
I bought a case of Oban Little Bay because there was a place in Florida that had it for $40, and I knew someone that lived there, and they shipped me a whole case. Oban Little Bay is a solid addition of the core lineup for Oban.
So I wanted to bring this. I love talking about Madeira because of the history of it and the use in the whiskey world, but also that I work for a cask strength company. Everything we do is super high proof. But it is important to me to push back on the idea that things have to be high proof to be used in sort of hardy, wintry situations, or even that you need high proof to monitor quality. When I was working in restaurants, I used to love pouring Madeira This is a really sweet style Madeira. It's called Malmsey. It's the sweetest of the grapes. Not that the grapes are sweeter, but it's the grapes used to make the sweetest style of Madeira.
I'm buying a bottle of this today. Is it local?
Yeah, it's a really easy to find bottle. I bought that at a Specs.
Good. Yeah, it's raisiny.
It's cheap.
It's sweet.
My
wife's gonna love that.
It stays good forever when you open it. It's great with cigars. It's a lot of people in the whiskey world talk about how if you really care about the whiskey industry, you should drink lots of sherry.
Oh, yes.
And I think that that's true about Madeira as well, that there's these beautiful historic products that people haven't blown up yet because there isn't the energy behind them that you have behind whiskey. Yeah. But as we get further and further into the spirits industry and all of the secrets get found and they get too expensive or they go away, there's still all of these beautiful fortified wines out there that serve the same purpose and in fact are like a safer alternative if you're getting into a car afterwards.
Sure.
Or if you're the type of person that is prone to doing things you don't want to do when you drink too much alcohol. There's still...
Done a few episodes I didn't want to do.
Yeah. There's still... this is 19%. It's not. Sure. It's not a low ABV drink, but it serves the purpose. It looks the same. It's. I can't help but be a little didactic when I get a platform like this and try Madeira. It's basically what I'm saying to people.
Yeah. No, it's great. These platforms are fun. I hope people enjoy. I've really kind of tried to adopt Rosewater's mentality or Eight Row Flint, their mentality on not just I only drink bourbon, I only drink this. Try everything. There's so many. That's fantastic. It tastes like raisins and Christmas. Mm-hmm. And the nose is not nearly as, it smells fantastic. And then when you taste it, it's like raisins times 1,000. Like it's just this delicious, like, and yeah, 19%. You're not drinking 60% or 120 proof alcohol. It's fantastic.
Cool. Well, thank you.
What's the price point on this?
Ooh. Off the top of my head, I don't really remember. They're usually about $40 a bottle for the 10-year-olds. But there's 7-year-olds and there's non-age statement ones that are much less expensive. There's a lot of cooking Madeira that isn't so good to drink, but the entry-level Madeiras are not particularly expensive.
So,
ready for, you want to try the reveal?
Yeah.
We got 5 minutes, right?
Okay, sure.
So this came out earlier this year. I think it was released in different markets in different places.
Is it yours?
What?
Is it one of your products?
Not one of our products.
Not one of your products?
No.
By the way, I love the idea of brand rep and a friend coming on and just for this shows your passion behind the industry. Not just, hey, I'm only here to talk about this product. I don't know what's in the bag, but the fact that it's not your product and the Madeira, you can tell you're a total nerd, and that's why I love you.
Well, thank you. Also, I should shout out Joe Beatrice, my boss, who a lot of people in my position would be scolded for not being on brand all the time.
Sure. Well, it's clear that he has a passion behind it too. I mean, just the number of finishes that you've mentioned are so outside the realm of standardized. We only do sherry finish, or we only do this. You mentioned several wineries that I wrote down so I can go Google later to find out what they are and where they're available. So no, it's clear that Joe and yourself are both extremely nerds.
We talked about this a little bit like a month ago, but I hope to do a dinner with you.
Oh yes,
where we pour the dovetail and then we pour the wine
that
was finished it.
Yeah,
and if we can find ourselves with a whiskey, we can pour that whiskey and we can pour the Madeira as well.
We've got a couple places. I don't know if you're familiar with B&B Butchers. I've been wanting to do something there. They have a beautiful balcony, and if you do it in the wintertime, which for us in Houston's like January, February, it's perfect. The balcony holds like 40 people. 50 people. So it's a perfect atmosphere for a dinner while still being outside, maybe cigars, maybe more wine, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or we can go back to Federal, which is my number one favorite spot all in Houston. So we'll definitely flesh that out. Yeah. We are definitely doing that.
Anyway, we have 3 minutes, so I want to get to
this. Yeah, sorry. So we've got, that's flexible. Okay. 15, they'll trim out the some fat stuff I said earlier. Yeah.
Anyway, so this was released this year, and it took the place of one of my all-time favorite drinks.
Sure.
And I wanted to taste it with you. I can either reveal it or we can taste it blind. I'm curious your thoughts on it.
What would you want to do blind?
No, I'm pulling it out of the bag.
Okay, just tell me this: is it Scotch or is it what is it? What's category?
It's a white spirit.
A white spirit. Okay, so it's eau de vie.
And I'm really skeptical of it, but because of Little Bay and some other stuff, I want to give it a shot.
Okay, so now you're confusing me. Go ahead. All right, I'm not looking.
So this is this took the place of an all-time favorite called Absolute Ruby Red. So this is the new Absolute Grapefruit. It's the new formulation of Absolute Grapefruit flavored vodka.
Okay. Wait, so I can look?
Yeah, you can look.
Oh, I was about to say, he's telling me what it is. I'm like, I thought I was blind.
And I haven't tried it yet.
Okay.
So I'm really excited about it.
Let's back up. Your all-time favorite was Absolute what?
Absolute Ruby Red. Actually, I take that back. My favorite flavored vodka ever was Absolute Boston.
I'm very hesitant right now.
Which was I just love being the person to get you to drink flavored vodka.
I've always had this view of you as being a real artist, and you are definitely.
I guess my reputation's on the line here.
This better be good. I mean, it smells great. I mean, the grapefruit notes are pretty prominent. I can't believe I'm drinking flavored Absolute vodka. Where's the Jaeger bombs at? I mean, it smells good.
I haven't had it yet.
You haven't had it yet?
No, I've only had the Absolute Red. They changed the formulation, and I was so mad. But
so, you know those things I tell you about? A little bump and proof, non-chill filter. This is 80 proof. It's vodka.
It's actually probably a distilled spirit specialty.
Really?
Legally, probably, because it's flavored.
Well, does vodka not allow flavorings?
Flavored vodka allows flavorings.
All right. I mean, it smells great. I can't complain. I can't believe I'm doing this.
I'm so happy to be here when you're doing this.
Can I say fuck? Is that allowed? Write that down. All right. I mean, it smells overwhelming. I mean, in a great way. Love you, buddy.
You know, last time I was here, I brought the T-shirt. I feel like I have to do something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable every time I come on this show. So
I like the T-shirt. I'm just upset that you didn't make one for me as well. I'm an extra large in case you ever. It tastes significantly better than I thought. I will say, though, so as many might not know, that when you distill past a certain proof, you basically kill off a lot of the flavor, almost all the flavor above 190, right? Which is where vodka starts. And there's this particular note I get from vodka that always tastes like the point in which all the flavor of the spirit itself is killed. However, it's not bad.
Well, my point of bringing it is I was standing in the store and I wanted to try it, and I thought it'd be fun to do it with you on air.
Absolutely,
I like it. I'm down. It's a little sweeter than the Ruby Red was, which I'm upset about. But
yeah, there's definitely some sugar content in there.
The other thing that I wanted to push, and this is with the Madeira too, is everyone should drink what they like to drink.
I'm telling you, as soon as we leave, I've got to get back to my side of town, but I'm going to be buying some Madeira today.
You can have that bottle from me as a present. Happy holidays.
You're a good man.
Yeah.
I forget how great Madeira is until someone gives you a reason to drink it. You get so caught up in rums and whiskeys and all your grapefruit flavored vodkas that you forget that Madeira exists.
I hope someone pulls a still of you holding this bottle and makes it.
I hope so. Here, let me do this. Ready? Can you grab a screenshot of this?
Houston Vodka Society.
Oh, don't even say those words. And by the way, I've actually on many occasions wanted to drink wine with you. Mm-hmm. I know that your background's in wine. I know that is your. I could be wrong, but my understanding is your like original passion.
Mm-hmm.
So, cheers.
Cheers.
Well, that's not savory. Here. Let's do this. There's not even a cork.
No.
God,
why would they? Why would they?
It.
They got to get it as cheap as possible.
All right, so we got a little cheers.
Cheers.
All right, it's not bad. All right, we got to go, guys. Thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
Thank you so much.
Let me get a great photo of the bottles and cheers, guys. Thanks.